Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We're live from the hub in Coaldale. Thanks to all the members of council for joining today. We have the agenda in front of us. I'll call the meeting to order, and we have item 1.1. Is there any items on today's agenda that give rise to any conflict of interest or pecuniary interest on today's agenda? I see no indication, so we'll move to item 2.0. I'll call for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Councillor Simpson indicates that she will support the motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Then we have item 7.1, tax and utility concessions for businesses and residents, and that discussion will be led by Cameron Mills.
Wait for the seat there.
To anybody waiting, thanks for your indulgence. This is our first go around on this format, so we're waiting for the floor director to give us the green light here.
Thank you. Also joining us by phone is Kyle Beauchamp, Director of Corporate Services. Kyle and I prepared this report together, and Kyle will be available for any questions with respect to some of the financial figures being discussed. What we've done here for you today is a review of taxes and utilities in particular, and some other economic development considerations, in order to provide some community support against the impact of the COVID-19 epidemic. So what we're going to be taking a look at is basically trying to mitigate as best as we can some of the impact associated with COVID-19, specifically to the business community, though that is going to be addressed with respect to residents as well. We're going to look at this from a perspective of both considering impacts to profitabilities and revenues, as well as cash flow considerations, particularly on our business owners. The way we've approached this is to suggest that there is too much uncertainty with respect to how long this process is going to So there might be probably too much uncertainty with respect to how long this is going to continue to make accurate predictions. So we're just trying to look at this under the basis of the fact that the impact of business has already begun, and it's reasonable to assume that it's going to continue and arguably worsen for coming weeks, potentially for months. And with that, we wanted to consider what it is we could do as an organization to help alleviate some of that impact. So we're going to take a look at, as I mentioned, tax considerations, utility considerations, as well as some general economic development considerations in terms of what we can do as an organization. Beginning with utilities, to provide some overview of how utilities work. So bills are provided monthly, usually about the first week of each month, and they're due at the end of the month. If bills are unpaid, there's a 1.5% penalty associated with non-payment. And if utility bills go unpaid for a period of 3 months, they get transferred to the tax account after a letter is sent out, and also there's a $30 administrative fee applied to the account at that time. With respect to utilities, the province has allowed for deferral of electricity and natural gas bill payments at this time, but that does not apply to municipal utilities necessarily, such as our sewer and water service. Taking a look at the town's revenues, including interest and penalties with respect to utilities, average monthly receipts for utilities are about $380,000 a month. Obviously, that varies from month to month, up and down, but that's a reasonable average. Generally speaking, the town would collect $1,250 per month in that penalty amount, that 1.5% penalty. And interest earned on the money that is coming in with respect to utilities amounts to about $2,500 a month in revenue for the town. So council, in considering utilities, can fundamentally take two approaches. There's the opportunity to consider utility payment deferral versus consideration of a penalty waiver. So deferral, for example, would be undertaken by the city of Calgary, where the utilities from bills from April, May, and June could be deferred and then split equally over a 6-month period from July to December. So that's an option we provided within that municipality. Given that not everyone will be unable to pay, a more conservative approach might be to simply waive penalties with respect to utilities. This would also probably be administratively simpler to do. So might consider a 3-month window of waiver of utility penalties for non-payment through June of 2020. This would basically encourage those who can to continue to pay, but would allow those who cannot to hold off on payments without penalty. Then at some point, we would have to make a decision with respect to how we would apply penalties going forward. So for example, if we decided to defer non-payment penalties for a 3-month period, for April, May, and June, then in July, theoretically, penalties would be applied to the entire balance. However, I would suggest that we would have an opportunity to come back and revisit the issue in May, for example, when we have more information with respect to what the uptake of that option is. So that is something for council's consideration. Taxes are obviously another significant issue. So taxes with respect to general information. Property assessment tax notices typically are sent out at the end of May, typically the last week of May, and are due on June 30th. If the 2020 tax levy isn't paid by June 30th, they are subject to a 9% penalty, and 2020 miscellaneous taxes and tax rates get a penalty of 1.5% each month. They remain unpaid thereafter. There is an assessment appeal deadline of 60 days after notices have been filed, and this carries a fee of $20 and requires an assessment appeal form to be filled out. According to the Municipal Government Act, assessment notices must be out no later than July 1st. Tax notices must be sent out before December 31st, in which the tax year is imposed. We sent tax notices and assessments together in one form. This may have been adjusted by Municipal Affairs yesterday. There was some indication from the Minister that the July 1st date has been changed to October 1st, so it's difficult to get details on that at this time. There's been a very preliminary announcement, but not a lot of follow-up information this time. TIP is a program that's run once a month with payments typically on the 16th or the next business day if that's on a weekend. Signing up for TIP for the 2020 tax year lasts up until May 31st. Currently, there are 926 TIP applicants. And we accept cash, debit, or check as a form of payment for taxes. With respect to tax revenues and tax revenues from interest and penalties, monthly penalty revenue at 1.5% per month averages at $5,000 a month. And typically, the 9% penalty that's applied on July 1st generates approximately $50,000 in additional revenue for the town. So deferring property tax payments for a period of 3 months would cost an estimated $45,000 in lost revenue in terms of the interest earned on that revenue typically. So that is with respect only to lost interest revenue and doesn't account for any sort of reduction in penalties or anything like that. Also, so deferring property taxes to the limit of December 31st would cost the town approximately $90,000 in lost interest revenue. That is an estimate from our corporate services department. Considering tax projections and rates, just as a reminder in terms of the plan for taxation as part of the 2020 operating budget, the operating budget called for a 0% increase for the residential rate this year and a 2% increase in the non-residential rate. The 2% increase in the non-residential rate has a value of approximately $25,000 in terms of additional municipal revenue. Actual inflation this year in terms of property values was 3.99%, so a 2% increase in the non-residential rate would actually still be a reduction in mill rate from 10.5451 in 2019 to 10.3353 based on that change in assessed value. If no 2% increase was applied to the non-residential rate, the mill rate for non-residential would then decrease from 10.54 to 10.1244. The municipal residential mill rate is expected to stay the same as last year. And at this point, we're projecting the school portion of the mill rate, which is not included in these figures, to be reduced by 5%. Due to an overtaxation of those amounts in 2019, though it's difficult to say at this point, given that the municipal portion is outside of our control. Other economic development considerations. Currently, we're working with Economic Development Lethbridge, as well as the Southborough Regional Initiative, to coordinate the one-stop shop portal that can be accessed to find information on the many programs that are coming out from the other levels of government as well as from the 40-plus municipal partners associated with the Southborough region. We believe pooling resources and not replicating work is the path forward on these types of measures, and under the overarching guidance of Economic Development Lethbridge. At this point, that means the contribution of manpower, so I have signed up for a post within the Financial Services Division of that task force. And myself and Peter Cassarella will provide council with a briefing on the Economic Recovery Task Force at a future meeting of council. We've also begun discussing ways we can spend more money locally as part of some of our major projects. We're trying to find areas within our major capital projects that are moving forward where we can pull projects out of, elements of the projects out of the RFP process to try to find venues for local small business to participate in those projects where perhaps they wouldn't be able to for larger projects. We've also been working with agencies like Community Futures, so we've developed the business improvement loan program with them where businesses can seek a loan of $25,000 interest-free in order to make capital improvements to their business. We've had some discussions with Community Futures with respect to the opportunity to remove some of the barriers the municipality has put in place with respect to that program. So the town of Coaldale has the fewest limits in place, or the most generous scope of projects that are approved under the Business Improvement Loan Program within this region. We've discussed with Community Futures, given that the volume of applications is not massive, that we would like any application for consideration to be considered and at least be provided to us for comment so that we can make sure that we have an opportunity to support any business investment that's coming in. We're also actively leveraging relationships with community partners and businesses to help support both our community and high-risk members. So we partnered with the Sunny South News to buy a page of dedicated advertising to allow local businesses to communicate changes to their operation without impacting their cash flows. So the Sunny South News and the town are splitting the cost of that program. We're also looking at ways to support residents who need to be confined, but who also need access to essential goods and services. We've been looking into a program with a local delivery recovery company to potentially assist with cost coverage for residents that require assistance who might not be able to get out of their homes services. At this point, with respect to some of these economic development initiatives, the cost of each of these programs at this point is extremely low. We're looking at potentially spending in the range of $25,000 across all of the programs, and that assumes some sort of contribution to the Economic Recovery Task Force as well, but that amount hasn't been identified. We believe that we're able to cover all of these costs within our existing operating budget, but at the same time, we would appreciate Council's consideration of these endeavors and support of them. Given the need to move relatively quickly with a number of these programs, we wouldn't be in a position to bring each and every item forward to Council, given the several week lead time that is typically associated with those types of decisions. But we wanted to have a discussion at this point to make sure that we're operating within a framework that's acceptable to Council at this time. So taking a look at recommendations coming out of these initiatives, with respect to utilities, it is administration's recommendation that we eliminate non-payment charges for a period of 3 months, which would be existing outstanding balances as well as April, May, and June, and that we would come back and revisit the situation with Council in May. So at that point, given that we still have another month in front of us, we'll have a sense of how much utility bill payment is varied and what kind of bills people are looking at in July, and we can come up with a solution for how we need to address the oncoming bills in July at that point when we have more information. With respect to tax notices, we think we're still going to be ready to send out notices in May of 2020, but we would defer, not differ, but defer payment of those fees from June 30th to September 30th, so to provide 3 months additional time to make those payments. We would suggest no monthly penalty up to September 30th, 2020, and the reduction of the 9% penalty to a 4.5% penalty on October 1st. And also, we think it's feasible to eliminate the planned 2% increase in non-residential taxes at this time. With respect to other measures, we're looking for a general support from Council with respect to supporting the Economic Recovery Task Force, as well as administration enacting or adjusting existing programs to support the local business community and our most at-risk or affected residents.
Okay, thank you, Cameron, for that presentation, and to all the people that contributed preparing the report and doing the analysis. I was just wondering, in your presentation you did, it seems that you were saying that there are currently people that are in late payment already for utilities, the $1,250, is that?
Well, there are always people who are late paying utilities. It's not always the same people. So that $1,250 figure is an average in terms of, on average, with $380,000 of receivables in a given month, on average, about 1.5% penalty for late payment amounts to about $1,200.
So with that in mind, if we were to approve something like that, would that complicate how these arrears are dealt with if the people that were in arrears in, say, February, if they keep persisting to be in arrears for, normally they would end up on tax rolls and whatnot if they persist in that. So is there any issue that we might be creating for, sort of?
Right, administratively.
Yeah.
Is Kyle, are you available? Kyle?
Do you want me just to go to the phone?
Is everyone muted? He's talking. We can see that he's talking. Kyle?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
You can.
Can everyone in council hear Kyle from here?
Yep.
Okay, Kyle, you're gonna wanna speak loudly.
Okay, so relating to that, essentially there's two things. The first one would be, that we only get charged penalties for 3 months, so anybody who has a balance owing before, like arrears before, for unannounced would not be charged penalties for the next 3 months. The unpaid utilities don't get transferred to the taxes until 3 months arrears. So we wouldn't have any additional amounts transferred to taxes under this, because we could basically postpone that program for 3 months and then revalidate it again, as Cam mentioned.
Right.
That gives us a little bit of time to kind of see how this is playing out. Gives us a little more understanding of to how many people will be using this deferral and how many people will be continuing to pay their utilities monthly.
So so if I can paraphrase, are you saying that penalties on existing outstanding balances would be frozen as well as on new balances?
Correct. With this approach, it would be.
Yeah, I'll throw it open to council if you have any questions. Maybe raise your hand and unmute your mic at the same time. Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks very much for the presentation, Cam. I'm in favor of waiving the penalties, and I would be very much in favor of waiving penalties right through until December 31st. But I'd very much like to have our taxes sent out for the June 30th payment, not waiting until September. That way people that want to pay their taxes can certainly do so. Those that are having issues with it will know what their taxes are going to be, but it'll be up to them then to decide whether they want to pay it later and have some of the penalties deferred. But I really want to see those taxes go out as if it's a regular, normal year. I'm not in favor of waiving the penalties on existing arrears. I don't think that's correct, that we should be, because of the situation we're in right now, actually patting somebody on the back for not paying their taxes in the past. I don't think that's correct. So, because the deferring of penalties is only, looks like it's about $15,000 per month, looks like is what Kyle has calculated. So with that, I'd be more than happy to waive those penalties through to December 31st. Thank you.
Any other members of council have any comments? Councillor Chapman, please unmute your mic and proceed.
Thank you, Worship. I think the two questions that I have for Kyle would be the penalty owing. So if you say it's would be frozen right now and then added to your penalty of 4.5% starting September 1st, am I on the right track on that? Or October 1st, I should say. That would compound their arrears in that point. From that point, that would be my first question. My second question is, for those of us who could pay our taxes on June 30th, I would like to continue that program. I guess my only concern is that, along with Councillor Holm, is that I'm sure that we might see more applications for penalty waivers after September 30th.
I think I want to commend the administration with their thought process, because I think in following council's previous sentiment on this matter, to try and dive in early to let the residents and businesses of Coaldale know that we are concerned about the future and want to take away one less stress. I think the administration has tried to develop a fairly simple process, not not over complicated, some of other municipalities are making people actually apply for deferral and apply for this and apply for that. And the ability to have a simple process where, it's understood that, generally speaking, I think this process means that people that can pay their utilities just keep paying their utilities, and that's good on their behalf, that they won't have a 90-day utility bill to stare at down the road. And the same with their property taxes. We have a number of people that have uptake on the TIP program, and a number of those people are already paying their taxes that way. So I think it's really a very good attempt to keep a nice simple process here, and I think the sentiment going out, if this is approved to the people of Coaldale, is that council has their back and doesn't want to just add one more layer of stress to their daily routine as they struggle through this pandemic. So I commend the council for asking the administration to come forward with this process, and I commend administration for putting this together. Is there other, Councillor Simpson, you have a question?
So my question is for Kyle. So first of all, and Cam, first of all, what made you choose September 30th? And the second question is, from June 30th to September 30th, how much money are we looking at that's gonna owe? Like, so we don't have that money sitting in the bank. Are we able to recover it from other areas for the time being to cover for that with no penalties to us? Or, so what would the cost be for deferring it for those extra few months?
Kyle, are you able to take that question? Kyle, are you able to take that question? Kyle?
Dan, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, we're good now.
Okay. So the 3 month, so September 30th was picked to kind of coincide with recommendations or best practices out there, as best as we can say it, for the 3 month utility deadline. We didn't recommend a December date. The issue with December is if you make it the December 31st date, that's over the holidays, a period where the town office is closed, there's less staff available. So if we make it the end of the year, it would be difficult for people to come to the town office to pay that if the town is closed. So that's why we recommended September 30th for that. The comments on cash, we have no concerns as far as operating cash with town of Coaldale. So there's no concerns about that. Was that the 2 questions? Or is there something else like this?
So what would the cost from June to September be for withholding that tax base within that time?
From an interest base, it would be, I believe, roughly $45,000 to $50,000. That excludes any penalties and whatnot that additional penalty revenue would be collected. So that would be approximately $5,000 a month. With the $40,000, you're at about $55,000 to $60,000.
So with that, there would be no other, any extra cost that we would foresee for not having that money for that 3 months? Like, is there anything on top of that amount?
I think I can handle it, Kyle. So the question is there additional costs? So basically the way we looked at it is said there's lost revenue associated with not earning interest on the money that comes in over that period, which we're estimating to be about $45,000. And there's the foregoing, the typical monthly revenue from payment levies, so that's an additional $15,000, so that's where the $60,000 value comes from. There is no estimated cost associated with, for example, needing to take out an operating line of credits to cover our own cash flows because we have significant enough cash that we're not anticipating the need to do that.
The nice thing about this, from my perspective, is that if council has some concerns about the tax issue, the property taxes, that isn't necessarily looming, is not imminent. Right now, the imminent question is the utility process, because we're going to be a couple of days away from April 1st, a new utility cycle going out, and I think, if council has any concern, we can signal that, whatever is decided upon on the utility part could be implemented if agreeable, and defer on the tax issue, because I was at a town hall, I was participating in a town hall phone call hosted by Premier Kenny yesterday from 2 to about 3:30, and there, as Cameron alluded to in his opening remarks, there is discussion about how the tax assessment payments and the dates and all that roll out, and I'm not 100% sure how that all impacts all the other things tied in with property taxes for the future, but as we move forward, I think we can adjust in that. If we're trying to model after other municipalities or the sort of what the lead of the province is, we can. It seems that 3 months is sort of what they're talking about, and we can have we can just simplify the taxes by looking at it like a 3-month kind of a program if we implement that. Cameron.
Yeah, so if I may, so there's two issues really with respect to tax, and it touches on the point Roger made as well. So Roger had made the comment that we want to get people's tax notifications out to them so that they know what their bills are. We're still proposing that there's no change to the tax notification dates, so that's still something we're proposing would be done in May. We're simply suggesting that the payment due date be moved for a period of 3 months from June until September, and looking at the associated costs with respect to that. The change that we've, as I understand it at this point, like I say, information is very limited, but my understanding is that the change made at the provincial level at this point is an allowance to allow municipalities to push the deadline for tax notifications from a July 1st deadline to an October 1st deadline. So at this point, we are required to send out those notifications by July 1st. We send them out in May. They're suggesting we can delay that until October. We always have the ability to push tax collection out till December 31st. Nothing about tax collection, as I understand it, has changed. We do that in June 30th. We always have the ability to collect in September or October or December as we see fit. We have just as a matter of practice done so in June. Because there's really, when you talk about taxes, there's two dates. There's notification date and there's payment date. And it's important to provide consideration of those.
Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a similar concern on item number 3 with the existing debts. I don't think we should be canceling their debts right now, or their interest. And do we have to deal with both the taxes and the utilities at once? Can we do the utilities now and do the taxes maybe next month when we have more information?
Certainly. The reason we brought taxes forward today, particularly within the guise of an economic development approach, is that we feel that the earlier we make a decision on taxes, the more certainty and the more confidence we can provide to our business community. And that's why we were interested in moving as quickly as possible with respect to that, with an understanding that any decision we make today to push things out could theoretically be changed again down the line. But we saw an opportunity to address it now in order to sort of get ahead of the issue. But there's no requirement to make any decision on any of these matters at this point now.
Councillor Simpson.
For the accounts that are already in errors, it would be too hard for our system to not charge them that interest, correct? Because for that 3 months, like for the ones that are already due, and then Because like I just know usually when you run your process, the computer just does it for you. It would be too hard to individualize them out, correct?
Kyle, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I can. That's something that, I believe we might be able to do. In order to do that, we would just have to make the next 3 months as current charges. So we would change our dates. So typically right now it's 30 days as current. We would move that to 90 days as current. And then if we accomplishing that, we would still charge late penalties on anything owing before this decision. So that's in theory how I believe the system works. We just have to work with Melanie to make it there. But I believe we can do that. It's not something we've tried before, but I believe we can.
Okay, is there any further discussions or questions? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship. Is there any other recommendations on that point on the arrears part? Or I'd be happy to make a motion. And speaking to my motion would be number 7. That I think I would be excited and excited to hear in the future how CAM's going to be moving forward with some of the economic development proposals. I'm sure that you'll have some ideas and some creativity in terms of encouraging and stimulating the economy in Coalville.
Would administration be able to bring up the recommendation page so I could see it? So there's 7 recommendations there, and maybe would it be preference to deal with this in omnibus or split split it and take each recommendation one at a time? Maybe that might be simpler, I think, because I hear a little bit of diversity on the opinion on what different points might be or whatnot. So we have the recommendation number 1 that council reduce the non-payment charges on utilities for April, May, and June of 2020 from 1.5% per month to 0. But exclude, I would think from what I'm hearing that maybe it might be excluding the current arrears.
Item number 3.
Well, that's tax balances, but this is utilities. But I'm not sure, what council's will is on that matter, but Councilor Chapman, did I hear that you wanted to sponsor a motion and when you had the mic before?
Just repeat. I would be happy to amend the motion if you'd like to split the motions or split the 7 up.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be more expedient if we went.
And then you can deal with number 1 in a more formidable fashion.
Councilor Holm?
So I would move that council reduce the non-payment charges for utilities for April, May, and June 2020 from 1.5% down to 0%, excluding outstanding utility charges.
So for clarity, the motion would be to exclude current utility customers that are currently in arrears.
Correct.
As of the end of March. Is that right?
That'd be correct.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on motion number 1? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. So then we have, okay, and item number 2 is there. Councillor Simpson?
I'll make that motion to direct administration to adjust the date for tax collection from June 30th to September 30th.
Okay, discussion, CAO Hastings?
With the understanding and the clarification that we're still sending out notices as planned.
Okay, so we have that motion by Councillor Simpson. And is there any discussion to motion number 2? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And then Kevin?
Point of information, given the resolution that was passed in one, that the non-payment charges for utilities excludes existing outstanding charges. I think by implication then you can scratch number 3 off for consideration because that's already been dealt with in the motion on number 1. Just to move things along just for clarity.
Clarity is our friend. But Zoom seems to be hostile to me right now. But. Okay, and then I don't have all the bullet points on my screen, so we're down to number 4. Can somebody read out point number 4 for? I don't see it. No. Okay. Number 4, that council reduced the non-payment penalty applied to outstanding balances after the tax collection date from 9% to 4.5%. Does anybody care to sponsor that? Councillor Simpson moves recommendation number 4 as presented. Any discussion? Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Worship. I'm not in favor of this. We put the 9% in years ago for a reason, and that is just to ensure that once it is tax collection time, that we actually do get payment for it. We've already put in motions to defer payment of taxes. We've already put in motion to defer the penalties for it, to reduce this penalty at this time. Also would, I think, go against what council has done for the past number of years. So I would be voting against the reduction of this penalty, because it does say once the collection date is put in place, and council may put that date as December. We don't know yet.
Okay, so we have Councillor Simpson has sponsored that motion, and is there any other discussion? Okay, I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's 4. Oh, okay, all in favor? Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then opposed. And 1, 2, 3 opposed. The motion's carried. Okay, and then we have item number 5, that council eliminate the planned 2% increase in the non-residential tax rate. Councillor Chapman?
I'll move that as worded.
Okay, Councillor Chapman moves bullet point number 5 as worded. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Okay, and then we have bullet point number 6, that council officially support administration's participation in the Regional Economic Recovery Task Force and authorize administration to allocate resources within the existing budget to that initiative as required. Councillor Lloyd? Councillor Lloyd moves item number 6 as worded. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And then bullet point number 7, that council, recognizing the continuously changing nature of the existing economic environment, support the diversion of resources within the existing budget towards local initiatives designed to support the local business community or at-risk residents through the Economic Development Department and their designates as required. I would maybe stipulate that any of those initiatives would be reported back to the council as implemented. Councillor Simpson moves recommendation number 7. Do you move it as with the requirement for appropriate reporting as? Okay, Councillor Simpson makes that motion as amended. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, Cameron and Kyle and all the people that participated in bringing this forward. So our next item of business is 7.2. Spencer Coyle has a report on Municipal Development Authority appointing designated officers.
Mayor, good evening to you as a council. This evening I'd like to briefly discuss bylaw 681-EP-07-13, being our Municipal Development Authority bylaw. The way I'd like to discuss it is by referring to sections 2 and 3 of the bylaw itself. So section 2 indicates, for the purposes of this bylaw, the Municipal Development Authority shall be either the Municipal Planning Commission or the designated officer. So typically, in our development processes, what that means is anything that's discretionary in nature or that has enough waiver requests attached to it will be the purview of the Municipal Planning Commission, and anything that's permitted or has a small enough or insignificant enough waiver attached to it would be a decision by the designated officer, which is also known as the development officer. The way the bylaw currently reads, council must appoint each individual person to either the Planning Commission or the designated officer role. So at this time, we're simply asking for that one layer of, I guess, the responsibility to appoint individuals specifically to the designated officer role to be shifted to the chief administrative officer. So the resolution that's been recommended to achieve this is as shown on the staff report that council designated the CAO as the Municipal Development Authority through section 2B of this bylaw. All that means is that the CAO is the designated officer. As per section 209 of the Municipal Government Act, the CAO can then designate individual staff to act as the designated officer or the development officer for the municipality. This recommendation is being made really with an eye to efficiency for council's time and recognizing that the CAO already makes a number of decisions around who's responsible for what roles within the municipality. And with that, I'll open the floor to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. I'll open the floor to any questions. Okay, seems fairly straightforward from my perspective. I would entertain a motion. Or Councillor Simpson?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll make a motion that council designate the CEO as the MDA for section 2B in bylaw 681.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Simpson. Any discussion? I see none. I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Spencer. Then we move on to 8.1. We have a report by Clayton Rutberg.
So thank you. So I just wanted to give kind of an update on where we are with the COVID-19 stuff that we've been dealing with here locally and what's kind of been going on over the last week, because we touched base with you guys last week. We've been continuing to do public messaging as well as some internal messaging to our staff to ensure that everybody is current and up to date with what's going on. We implemented some significant staffing and schedule rotations to ensure that we were limiting exposure to staff working, especially with operations staff, which I think we were in the middle of doing last time when we did our update. We're currently working on the enforcement powers of the community peace officers to be able to enforce the orders that have come down under the Public Health Act. We've got the bulletins and kind of all the information this morning from the SolGen on how that is to be dealt with on their level. Should we have to do any enforcement? We've been ensuring, again, the function of our services through our alternate delivery models, our work from home, those types of models. And we've been trying to engage heavily with our external stakeholders, and Cam's been getting a lot of that burden, being our liaison officer, discussing with some various external stakeholders. He's kind of the go-to person, especially for businesses and stuff, being the role that he's in for that right now. But that's kind of our update from the last week. And I'll just pause there, Kaylin. I'm not sure if you have anything to throw in from the ops side of things, if there's anything that needs to be added to that.
No further updates since Monday's regular meeting.
Yeah, Kaylin's just been our ops chief in that role. And like I said, we've been doing the staffing and making sure that we're reducing the exposure to our staff through scheduling and proper procedures as well.
Thank you, Clayton, for the update. Is there any questions through the Clayton with respect to his update? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Worship, and Clayton, thanks so much for all your hard work and your updates with your administration and council on all matters that pertain to the town of Coaldale. I guess my question really is to you in terms of enforcement and the question of capacity for enforcement. I know that there was a big question of the mayor in Calgary today about enforcement matters, and so I guess the whole idea that it's about stop the Anyway, I'll just leave it at that, but, is that working out okay there?
We have had a couple more educational, if you will, where we've been educating some individuals. We haven't had the need for enforcement at this point. So far, there's been a couple instances in the last couple of days where we have had to educate some individuals, whether it's been around playgrounds or that type of stuff. But for the most part, everybody's been willing to comply when we do have to deal with that.
It seems generally within our immediate vicinity, Coaldale is very well behaved in the respect of honoring social distancing and being as compliant as possible. It's an evolutionary process, and there is a lot of confusion because every day there's a new layer of restrictiveness and new nuances to how the senior levels of government choose to combat the current pandemic, and it's not easy for them to grapple with all that, and it's certainly not easy for many residents and businesses to know exactly what the right way is. But from what I've been able to see, is that most of the businesses and people are modeling pretty good social distancing behavior and being respectful of the severity of the current situation. And we're really lucky to be in the position that we're at. We have very reasonable people in senior levels of government that have been fairly proactive in what they're doing, and our hopes and prayers are that continues and we don't have worse and worse details to report. I know today was a sad day for Alberta with 5 new deaths reported, and I'm sure on behalf of council, all of our collective hearts and minds and prayers are with all the members of all the families that are currently battling COVID-19 and have lost their battle, and our prayers that the numbers don't escalate and we can come out of this pandemic and economic disaster in a much better position in the weeks and months to come. But we're really served well with the first responders, the healthcare providers, and our first responders that are out there. I know today our fire department had to react to a fire in Parkside, and that was very sad. Our minds are with that family that have to add that stress level onto what's already a very stressful situation, and we're none of us, our thoughts are with them as they tackle that extra challenge to their lives. And that looked as on the social media that people were stepping up already to lend assistance and be good Coaldalians and step up to lend a hand. So we're very fortunate that we're in a small, tight-knit community that cares for one another, and I hope that continues on for the balance of this pandemic. And thank you, Clayton, for your report. Unless there's any other questions or concerns, I consider a motion to adopt Clayton's report for information. Councillor Avery, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much. And now we have concluded the public portion of the meeting. We have our CAO, Kalen Hastings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going through the motions that were made in response to item 7.1, the tax and utility concessions. Am I correct to assume that if we're not waiving the penalty charges for those who were previously in arrears for utilities, the same follows for those who were previously in arrears with taxes? I just wanted to make sure that that was correctly captured, and if you want maybe a subsequent resolution would help just to ensure that the same parallel between the handling of arrears, past arrears for utilities is the same for taxes. That would be appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much so I think that it would be in order to entertain a motion to treat the existing arrears situation on property taxes as we are with our philosophy on arrears for the utilities. Councillor Holm? Councillor Holm moves that we not waive the penalty and arrears for the existing property tax that are currently in arrears as of March 31st. Any discussion? I see none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. And I would entertain the motion to go into closed session. Councillor Lloyd moves that we go into closed session. All in favor?